Hi, I'm Diane Maiese, a former diver and the first Division One female black diving coach. And I'm also the CEO of Dive RVA, a nonprofit diving organization here in Richmond, Virginia, hoping to establish the first full aquatic facility for diving in the city.
Hi, my name is Joelle Williams. I am a Division One diver at Marshall University. I started diving when I was 14 years old, and I'm the founder and creator of Black Girls Diving, a social media campaign that recognizes and celebrates women of color in the sport of diving. As we continue to celebrate Black History Month, we want to celebrate the members of our community who have broken down barriers. In 2009, Daniel Dickerson became the first Black person to win the Ivy League championship in both the 1 meter and 3 meter boards. Today, we are having Daniel, as well as his mother, Genevieve, here to tell their story and experiences, both from the perspective of an athlete and parent.
Um, Danielle and Genevieve, thank you so much for joining us today. Um, this is going to be a wonderful insight to your world of diving, which obviously is probably quite different than most other people who have experienced the sport.
100%. Well, we'll start with Daniel. Daniel, where did you grow up and how did you get into diving?
Sure. And thanks again, both of you all, for making the time and reaching out to my mom and I to tell our story a little bit. So I grew up in Richmond, in Virginia, technically about 20 minutes south of the main city, a town called Midlothian. How I got into diving was pretty much a mistake, to be honest. In the summertime, I grew up swimming at a local swim and racket club called Woodlake. And, from 5 until 9 or 10, I was swimming competitively and was doing well in it. During the summer league practices, I would look over and I'd see, the diving well, and I saw, summer league divers doing flips and twists. And I always thought it was interesting. And, I walked up to the coach at the time and said, "Hey, look, I'd like to try this out." And I actually remember she told me I was like 1 day late for signups and that I have to wait until next year. And, I was pretty bummed. And I said, "Hey, look, is there anything I can do to just try out?" She said, "Sure, go do a jump." And then I did a jump, and then I did a backwards jump. And the next thing I knew, she was like, "Yeah, I think we can find a way for you to be on the team this summer."
Genevieve, what did you think of when Daniel told you that he wanted to join the dive team?
Quite frankly, I thought he had lost all of his medulla oblongata. I thought he had lost his mind. I was like, are you seriously kidding me? You're going to stop swimming? And he had been on the swim team Poseidon since he was 4.5. And like he said, he had done quite well. I was a stroke and turn judge, and I knew his potential. I thought he had lost all of his mind. And he said, "Mom, I'm just tired. I just want to do my own thing. I want to be on my own platform. I think I can do it. Can I take gymnastics?" No. No. So I said yes, because he's always been a very intelligent person, period. From the day he was born, I knew I had something on my hands. Because when he was 4.5, he went to the country club, went up on the diving board, and the lifeguard said, come down right now. You are too small to be up there." He turned around, he took one step, and he missed the rest and landed face first on the pavement. So I was sitting there and I heard a smack. I turned around, there's Daniel laying, blood everywhere. Long story short, he broke his nose. I went, wow, that's the end of his swimming and diving. I thought, but still, he said one day, "I want to be a diver." And I figured if he wanted to do it, I would stand behind him. I had no idea what was that. So yeah, it was a shock, big shock. Because he was much older than the other kids, like Mikey and those guys. They started at 4, 5, and 6. Here he was 11, 12, saying he wanted to be a diver. So yeah, I was shocked.
So I'm also from the Richmond area. I know Woodlake well. Fortunately, they're one of the only places, well, unfortunately, they're one of the only places with an indoor diving well, along with a 3 meter board. When did your summer diving switch to year round? Because we know you couldn't have achieved the level of diving that you have without having that transition. Because summer league is a good fun, a lot of fun, 6 months, 6 weeks. But after that, the season's over.
Yeah. So it was about 11 or 12 was when I it really switched over. You touched on it a little bit, Diane, but that's kind of the biggest issue that we ran into was access to facilities, right? Like Woodlake had a 1 meter diving board and a 3 meter diving board, but to be frank, the team was expensive. It was a high barrier to entry. And then on top of that, like it's not just paying for the time to be on the team, it's paying for the travel, paying for, going to meets, paying the flights, paying for hotels, et cetera. So, I was fortunate enough to find my way over to UVA. They had a junior club program there that we could drive after school for about an hour and 20 minutes. We would carpool with two other divers at the time that were from my neck of the woods who just wanted better access to a facility. So around 11 or 12, I got linked up to, it was just the UVA junior program run by the coach Dave Fafara, and he kind of taught me the really core basics of like how to really build on my skill set about diving and become more of a year-round diver. And then it became a thing where, from a recruiting perspective, being outside of that 50-mile radius could raise issues for college if I ever wanted to dive in college. So he actually shut down that program, and I ended up going to the Northern Virginia program, the York Dive Club with Bill York. And again, like 2 hours one way while trying to be in high school and trying to like be, educated and just trying to function on a day-to-day basis after being 4 hours in a car, going and doing, a workout and then getting back in the car. It's difficult to do. And again, just the access to facilities from a cost perspective was tough. So, actually like towards the end of my high school career, I wasn't really even on a club team. I was doing, my own kind of training and using the 1 meter over at Woodlake and using the 1 meter over at my high school, St. Christopher's. And then I would actually, there would be times where, the 3 meter at Woodlake was out of commission or not very good. So I would do a lot of my build-ups, and then, we go to meets and my mom would try and find some coach on deck to help coach me. And I would end up, throwing some of my list kind of cold turkey for not doing it on 3 meter for three or 4 months at a time between regionals and nationals. So
during that time, what motivated you to handle all of the different activities and time management in school? What drove you to continue doing sport?
Yeah, it was tough at times, right? Because, given my physical build, I was better at a lot of other sports. I played a lot of other sports. I could have been probably better at other sports if I had taken that avenue. But one, I really liked diving. I thought it was something that I was very interested in. It was how I liked spending my time. It allowed me to distinguish myself just from being, again, on that individual platform. And it was also just seeing the effort that other people were putting into it. Like, my mom was driving me back and forth. We were putting a lot of money and time into it. Like all of those things kind of drove me down the path of, wanting to pursue this. And then also like there were some dividends I was getting out of it, right? Like I started winning some local level summer league competitions pretty frequently. And then, that translated into getting second at states as an 8th grader. And then, I ended up winning our state meet for 4 years in a row from 9th to 12th grade. But it was also weird, right? Like, sure, I was winning these things on the local level, but it was always easy to explain it away. I would say, well, it was a private school state league and I wasn't going against, some of the bigger names in my high school level at the time. Or, for me, like I wasn't, even though I was doing all really well at the state level, like I wasn't consistently making it nationals earlier on. Like I wasn't consistently, making, level cuts or whatnot. It was easy for me to just look at other people and how they were doing and kind of get discouraged actually.
Well, Daniel, just so you know, your record still stands at St. Christopher's. So we won't say how long ago that was, but that is the only record from that decade that is still on the board. So congratulations for still holding that record, although it is just high school. But it really isn't though, right? Because high school really is what can open the doors for so many athletes to get farther into the sport. A lot of kids don't even start until they're later in life. They don't know it exists at the early ages. If they don't, like you said, don't have the access to the facilities, they actually don't see diving until high school.
Mm-hmm.
Genevieve, Daniel talked about the time, granted, while you're driving every which direction, He could work on his academics, but that's a long commitment for you because it's not just the driving, it's also the time that he's in practice that I mean, you were a single mother at the time, right? So if you could just walk us through your day in the life with Daniel.
Daniel's very humble, and I taught him to thank you. I mean, I'm remiss. Thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it of you all putting this together. Daniel's very humble. I taught him to be that because it's in the scripture. But he forgot to tell you that he started the dive team at St. Christopher's. There was no dive team, and so he was the only one. And they never won a swim championship because when they got to diving, the score was 0. So when Daniel started diving, they won first place in the state 2 years in a row because of Daniel. He forgot to tell you that. So that's what really I felt. Then I knew, I said, something's good here. And they would, when we would go to dive meets, people would come out and say, there he is. Like God had descended from heaven. There he is, there he is. And they point, Daniel was not cognizant of this because he was busy, practicing. But every day, I didn't work from the time Daniel was born. And I'm thankful for that because my whole life was dedicated to Daniel, and I don't regret it, but it made him the man he is, not by myself, with God, of course. But I would pick him up from school. He had to have his pan pizza from Pizza Hut, and then he would eat that. We drive 1,000 miles a week. We did that for over 2 years. How I did that, I don't know. I get tired when I say the word, but we drove to Vienna, so you know how far that is. He would eat his pizza, and I'd say, okay, so now you're going to study on the way up? Yeah, Mom, I'm going to study. And next thing I knew, Daniel was gone. I said, okay, you didn't study on the way up, so that means you got to study on the way back. Yeah, Mom, on the way back. And the traffic from DC, if there's any type of repair, instead of a 2-hour drive, it can come a 4. We'd get home sometime at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and then he'd be at school at 7:15. So I'd wake him up at 5 o'clock, get up, study. And so I had to do that with him because I knew he had to be successful. He did not have a lot of time, didn't play outside with the children on the weekend because we even went up there on Saturday morning at 5:30. So it was arduous, but I don't regret it because that's what it took. And he had nobody here would coach him in this area. I think the main thing that did him was when like you said, his junior year. Was it junior? Yeah, we had to go to Florida, the Florida Keys, and he found the Olympic coach. He found it. The Olympic coach, what's his name?
Ron O'Brien?
No,
No,
Olympic.
she's talking about there was a Cuban diver who worked a lot with the Canadian team, Arturo Miranda.
Arturo.
Oh.
Yeah. So we called Arturo. I said, hey, listen, can you coach my boy? You don't have a coach, and blah 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 and blah blah. He said, well, come on down here. So we went to the Florida Keys, and he said to Daniel, he said, do your thing. I was like, Lord have mercy. So Daniel did his thing on high dive. He was okay, man. And he finished second in the region in the Junior Olympics. He never finished that high. I knew then. I said, this is it. So he had a lot of potential. Daniel, they said they come with this phenomenon because he was Black. They said he must have some extra tendons in his foot. So when he hits the board, he goes higher than everybody. They said, how does he go that high? I don't know. I didn't make him. So he just had the propensity to do that. But, he was oblivious to a lot of stuff going on that I, as a parent, saw. There were ubiquitous environmental contaminants everywhere. You know what I mean by that? They would stare, who is he? And then people would have the audacity to come up at Princeton too, in the stand and go, well, which one is yours? And I go, huh? They go, which one is yours? I go, the blonde one there with the blue eyes, that one's mine. They go, oh, and then Daniel would come up, hi, Mom. And they go, oh my God. So, I played games with them like that. But I think when he won the Ivy League, I think that kind of did it, because Greg Gunn would have him do this hippity hop step. And he'd say, I don't like the approach. I said, just do what the man says to do. Okay. And so he would do the approach. And when he won the 1 meter, I was like, okay, I'm sitting there like this. Then when he won the 3 meter, and that meant he won the whole thing, I was like, I thought I was dreaming. And it was that was the moment that I knew he had all of the hard work that we had done paid off.
So you talk about the time that Daniel won the Ivy League championships. Daniel, did you know that you were the first Black individual to do that?
No, I had no idea, honestly, right? Like for me, it wasn't really like a focal point for me about, the individual aspect of things. I think that was one of the great things about being a diver in college, especially on a team like Princeton. You know, we were a really tight knit group. If you ask anyone in, on the college campus, like the swim team was insular. My two best men for my wedding were both teammates and roommates of mine in college. It really was a team focus, which is not something like that I really experienced a lot of growing up. And I think for me, even when I did win both boards that year, it wasn't something that you kind of go back and rehash the minute details of it. It was more for me, we were all out there grinding every day. We were taking exams on the road. We were dedicating 25, 30 hours a week to something because we loved doing it. We weren't scholarship athletes. We could quit at any time and we wouldn't be kicked out of school. We just all really liked doing it. It wasn't until I think a couple years after college, I was back actually it was the year after I graduated. I was back at Ivy's they were hosted at Harvard that year, and someone asked me to hand out awards during the awards ceremony for that, which was odd because whenever the school's hosting it, they typically get alums from that school that's hosting to hand out awards. But someone was like, look, you were the first Black person to win either board in diving, and then on top of that, like I'd won a couple other things along the way. I was like the high point career diver and the high point diver of that meet. So anyways, when they reached out to me and asked me to hand these awards, I happened to be at that meet. That was kind of when I first realized it. And it's funny to think about it, right? I think a lot of times growing up, it wasn't something I focused on, right? Like I had a chip on my shoulders because I felt like I didn't have the access that other people had to pools. I felt like I didn't have the right exposure or camaraderie at meets, right? Like people had teams of 10 or 15 divers going to meets. It was just me and mom on the road solo, and I was finding coaches along the way. So, that chip on my shoulder, I think kind of just made me a little bit more, as mom said, oblivious to what was going on. But I think now, just given like all the social issues in this country that are being brought to light, you look back on it now and you think, man, it may have been important for these little mini steps to happen along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this can be answered by either one of you, but you talked about, Daniel, how you were oblivious to a point, I'm sure. You were aware that you weren't part of a big team, but I know from the stands, as a former athlete and then as a coach at the time that you were diving, so I think I might have been one of the coaches you pulled to the side and asked if I would watch you at a meet. I think at LaSalle, I don't know if it was called Catholic Nationals at the time anymore, but it was the high school, for lack of better words, it was Catholic Nationals. But the audience knew you were different. Were there times that it was more obvious than other times that Daniel was an anomaly?
It wasn't.
Yeah, I could go first if you want. I think there was one time where I look, again, I had a great experience in USA diving. I had a great experience diving, period. I think 95 to 99% of the times were things I look back on fondly. There was one meet that we went to where, this was back when I was still at UVA getting coached there. And my coach couldn't make the meet. It was a Moultrie Spring National meet because in Georgia, couldn't make the meet because he was a college coach and he had prior commitments. And he reached out to another coach on a different team saying, hey, can you just, help out and look after Daniel while he's down there. And I don't know what the conversation was between them, but I get there when I get there. And I would go to warm up and I asked, hey, can you help me warm up? He's like, very gruffly, it was just like, my entire team's done yet, like figure it out. And that was it. And then he just kind of dipped. So actually it's kind of funny. I look back on it now. Another coach saw what happened, and he was like, hey, look, if you need someone to help you out this weekend, like I'm happy to do so. He didn't even actually even charge us, which was funny to think about. But that was in terms of experience of being different, like that was probably something that stood out to me the most, was just that, I couldn't bifurcate whether it was I was an inconvenience or he just didn't want to be the one coach coaching the one Black person there.
I remember that distinctively. Of course I do, because I wanted to. Anyway, so, I didn't know that Daniel would remember that, but that was in Plantation, Florida. And when I
No,
got there,
Mom, it was in Moultrie, Georgia.
I thought it was in Plantation, Florida. But anyway, that's where we stayed at the bed and breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it really started, because we made the reservation over the phone. So I said, hi, my son's in diving. And she said, okay, fine. We've got a beautiful room at this place. It's a plantation and it's bed and breakfast. It's going to be really nice. We can't wait to see you. I said, awesome. What time are you arriving? Well, 1 o'clock. She opened the door. She went, I was like, oh God. She went stone faced, like, uh-oh, I didn't know. I said, hi. She goes, hi. I went, oh, what have we gotten into now? So we stayed there. And then the next day, like you said, this coach was just like, look, I really don't have time for you. You do what you got to do. But I was like, ugh. And so, it was little things like that, but that wasn't non-commonplace. It happened a lot. My mother was from France. My father's Black, of course. I can pick up. I know, I can feel it because I grew up with it. So, Daniel does notice that he grew up in the prep school was predominantly basically white. The neighborhood we're in is white, everything. So he doesn't see the color like mama, because I'm older and I've been through it. So I would pick up on little things and try to shelter him from it. Daniel, let's do this, let's do that. And I don't think he was cognizant at all times what was going on, but yeah, it was, everybody would just stare at him. And then when he would dive, they'd go, oh my gosh, he can dive? Like there's a Black man that can beat my son. And so I think, yeah, it's hard, especially in the field of diving. If he was a swimmer in the water, barely can see people in the water. But on that platform, when he's up there, all eyes were focused.
I was curious, were there any other Black divers at the time? Like, did you know any? Have you ever seen any on deck?
Yeah, I mean, you could count it on one hand, right? Like I'd say there were at any given time as I was coming up, there were probably 4 to 5. When I was a senior in high school, there were a set of brothers that were from Northern Virginia. I think the last names were the Butts, I want to say, or the Butts. One ended up diving at Virginia Tech, one ended up diving at George Mason. And then a little bit older than me, there was one other Black diver in the Ivy League. But what's funny is one Black diver that sticks out to me the most. It was the first year they had AAU nationals, and it was in Clearwater, Florida. And something that I always heard a lot of was, Daniel has a lot of raw talent. He has a lot of potential. And like over time, I kind of honed some of that raw talent into potential. But there was another Black diver from Chicago, this guy Mike Wright, and he had just started diving. I want to say maybe as a junior or sophomore in high school. We chatted. We had being the only Black guys at the full deck, like naturally we just kind of talked a little bit. But a couple of years later, I spent a summer training at University of Tennessee, and Mike had transferred from a junior college in Florida to be on the University of Tennessee swimming and diving team. And we really, really kicked it off the summer of 2009. And, we still talk to this day. Well, Mike, who I think he either got second to last or dead last at the AAU national meet, went on and became the first Black person ever to win a USA diving national title. He won multiple All-American honors at University of Tennessee, and he actually, won multiple SEC All-Championship honors there too. So it's just funny to think, like, again, I go back to that point about access, right? Like, I don't know what sort of access Mike had to pools in inner city Chicago. I don't know if it was good or bad, but getting more Blacks in the sport and increasing that diversity, I think, opens us up to a whole nother talent pool that has traditionally been untapped, right? Like, again, I can't tell you how many times, like, I was well built as a high school or college athlete, right? Can't tell you how many times I hear, oh man, are you sure you're in the right sport? Like, should you be playing football or something? It's like, well, I think I'm in the right sport because I just beat you. But otherwise, like, you take those comments and you internalize them. And it's good bulletin board material, honestly, right? Like, I can tell you every person that has ever made a side comment to me about anything that I've gone back mentally in my head and checked it off. And I'm like, yeah, but I had the last laugh. There were definitely people from Northern Virginia club teams. We had a huge Northern Virginia club team pipeline that ended up at Princeton when I was there. And I'd say all of them were better divers than I was growing up. But again, later on, I had the last laugh, and I you know, did I take satisfaction in that? Sure, to some degree, but is it also, was it motivating, helping me, you know, do 2-a-days every day in college, and helping me like do 2-a-days during training trip, and every time I was hurt or injured or tired and didn't feel like practicing, like those are the things that you put in the back of your brain and you think about. And like, you know, even when I think about now life post college, because like that's the thing that I think people just don't focus on as high school and college athletes. Like, okay, you're diving, you're a good diver, like what are you going to do after college? Not all of us are lucky to make it to the Olympics or be on the, you know, the national team and be able to make a living diving. What are you going to do? It doesn't really stop then, right? Like I had never heard of Wall Street until I came to Princeton, and then I never thought I'd be working on Wall Street for the past 10 years. But it's a tough environment. It's mentally tough. It's similar to diving, where there just aren't a lot of diverse candidates there that you can connect with. But at the same time, you know, having that mental fortitude from diving, like it kind of allows me to be able to make it through that progress of how hard it is to be a younger Black person on Wall Street. And I've been able to make it work for me, you know? Look, diving, when I look back at it, it's easy to say, oh man, I wish I had done another sport where I could have made a lot of money and done X, Y, Z. Well, there's a lot of ifs there, right? It's easy to go back and have revisionist history, but I think you are where you're supposed to be. And looking back at my time, both from diving as a younger person and diving in college, like I made my best friends in the world from being at a dive team in college. I ended up just being in the career path that was propelled partly by being on the dive team there. So no regrets. Actually, if I could go back and do it again, I wouldn't change anything. So
I would love to find out if either one of you has any advice for future minority athletes in diving, or their parents.
totally. I think it is very easy in a sport like diving to mentally defeat yourself. And there's a lot of intensity and pressure and focus. And I think that there's going to be some high points and there's going to be some low points, but you just have to remember that it's not a linear journey, and you have to keep believing in yourself and get what you want to get out of the sport. And I think once you have that attitude and that mindset, even the disappointments, you'll use those for fuel for future success, and you'll learn that it builds character down the road.
Be willing to dedicate that part of your life for his career, because if not, it's going to be hard. And they're going to have ups and downs. You're going to sit in the sand by yourself. Other women, well, you were nice, but most of the women didn't have too much to say to me. And I don't know. And they have their own camaraderie. You're not in that group. Like you said, we were alone a lot. So you have to be able to withstand that isolation, knowing that you're focusing on your child. And so I was just like happy for Daniel, but you're gonna have ups and downs. When he would smack in the water, oh, I could feel the smack all the way up in the stands. And the night before, you got to be able to go to bed early so he can get his sleep. It's a regimen. So
Are you done?
if I had to do it again, I'd do it again.
This question can go for either of you. When you envision the sport in the future, what would you like to see?
Yeah, I think, there have been other sports that have been traditionally less diverse that have made a conscientious outreach towards getting more diverse candidates in the sport, like whether it's USA rowing or I know lacrosse has made a major push in getting inner city or kids who typically wouldn't be drawn to the sport into the sport. Like I would love to see more diverse candidates diving, right? Like it makes you think that all the slights, all the stuff you went through to see the continuation of the sport, like isn't for naught, and that like it's continuing to grow. Like I would love to see an all Black synchro team. And it doesn't, and I think taking a step back too, I think it can be a little disarming to someone to say, oh, I want to see all Black this. Like all Black doesn't mean excluding white. It just means we are opening up the talent base to get more people into the sport. Thinking about it logically, more people in the sport means more revenues for USA Diving. It means the potential to get more people who could potentially win a medal in the Olympics. Like USA Diving has had a very historically successful track record with winning medals in the Olympics. There was a dry period. And I think that part of coming out of that dry period was that we opened the sport up to more people, that more people got exposed to USA Diving. So that's what I'd like to see. I think it would be really cool to see an all Black synchro team really succeed, because it shows that we've really made additional progress on top of what's already happened thus far.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too. I like to see more coaches like Diane and people of that nature, because not drawing a correlation between Serena Williams and diving or Daniel, but her father, who could not play tennis, shaped the girls to be champions. And so other girls, young girls, look at them, they emulate them. They want to be like a Serena Williams. So the more Black children that we get at a younger age and mold them, the more are going to want to, oh, he's doing that diving, I can do that. He looks like me, I can do that. I think that's imperative, because right now, before Serena and them hit the scene, Tiger Woods, it was all quote unquote a white sport. I think that needs to go, because there's a lot of talent out there, but we got to get them when they're young, and we got to mold them, and we got to have coaches that care that they become somebody. I think Greg Gunn, by far, in my opinion, was the best thing that came into Daniel's life. He said, when I dropped him off, he said, you're going to drop him off here at Princeton, a boy. He said, Genevieve, when you come back, you're going to pick up a man. And I said, oh, okay. So he really cared for Daniel, and it was, they had their moments, but when he won that championship, you could see Greg Gunn said, I've done my job. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, and we really appreciate you all making the time. It's been interesting to look back on it, right? Like, there are things you just don't think about as being significant. It's very easy to get lost in other successes of other divers that you've known, but each individual success in the Black community can be attributed towards something bigger than that. So it's good to see that.
Well, I totally 100% agree with you, Daniel. I think obviously the state of our country has opened up this door for us. I'm very appreciative of the pause that our country has taken to open up this door. And hopefully with that, we'll be able to see the future that you envision with having that all Black synchro team, and mainly just having, and that's part of the committee that Joelle and I are on, is to open up the doors and provide more access, and to be able to let more people know that our sport even exists. They shouldn't have to stumble upon it because they see it after swim practice.
Right.
And also,
Totally.
part of our committee is to tell the untold stories, the unexplored perspectives. Being a mother of a minority in the sport of diving is a very courageous feat, I will say. A lot of things that the two of you said have resonated with me and inspired me just as a current collegiate athlete. And I am so happy that these stories are finally getting a platform to be told on and shared with other athletes and inspire future divers.